those of you who don't know me, my name is Jen, and I was part of the planting team that came and planted Mission 11 years ago, which is crazy. And you may not have seen me around lately because I actually am the Oxnard campus pastor, so I'm in Oxnard most weekends. I love it there. I'm so grateful for what we've been able to do there. And of course, while I'm here, I have to give y'all an update of everything going on around that place. But before I do, I just want to say, hey, welcome to those of you outside on the patio and those of you online. Hello, welcome. I'm so glad that you are all here today. But here's an update on the last year that we've seen in Oxnard. First of all, we have moved locations from Pacifica to the PAC. We've moved from mostly video to mostly live teaching, and we move in and out of our space every single Sunday. We've painted classrooms and playgrounds in schools. We've served lunches at the Rescue Mission, passed out food with food share. We've handed out snow cones at soccer field and hosted 3 big, awesome movie nights. We have had a lot of dance parties because I'm in charge, and we have used every excuse that we can to get together and eat tacos, and we have ordered so many bounce houses. In fact, when kids show up at our church, they're like, where are the bounce houses today? And we're like, oh, it's actually not a part of church, but okay. One Sunday, the church left the building and we got to do service projects in the city. And another Sunday, the electricity went out. And so we got to do an impromptu service outside, which is actually one of our favorite memories. We packed 75,000 meals of oatmeal with Feed 805. And since July, we have thrown 8 parties in 8 weeks. Had 49 new people swing by Connection Point for a mug, 20 new families, and 38 new kiddos and mission kids. And over the last year, we have seen 23 people surrender their lives to Christ through baptism. So it has been a pretty awesome journey. Lots of ups and downs, lots of open doors, lots of closed doors, and we have just been watching God move in spite of us and in spite of all of the difficulties, all the challenges that we face. We have watched him move and rewrite stories and help people find freedom from addiction and reunite families, and it has been amazing. We have showed up, but God has showed off, and it has been an incredible journey. And I imagine that many of you in here today are on your own journey, and however you got here this morning, on that journey, I think this is a big part of it. I don't think it's an accident that you're here this morning, whether you came because you heard we had donuts or you heard that we had air conditioning or whatever it was that got you here this morning. I'm so glad that you are here. And as you may know, we've been in this series together called Holy Crap, and we've been having a lot of fun with it, silly bumpers, and obviously the series title is a little, out there, but we've been having some pretty serious conversations around some phrases that we hear, or maybe even often say that we maybe think are in the Bible, but they're actually not. They're actually just a load of crap. And a couple weeks ago, we talked about one phrase that you may have said or heard, that is that we should have more faith, and if you had more faith, that you would have got the job or had the money or the success that you wanted. But really, we see through the Bible that that's actually not how it works at all. That it is our faith that sustains us through difficult times and through life that can be really challenging and hard. And we see that throughout every character in the whole Bible. We see the consistency of that. And then last week, Jody talked about a phrase we have sometimes heard or said, that everything happens for a reason. And that's often what I have heard or what well-meaning people have said, or I have actually said. And the truth is, the reason is because I was in a situation where the pain was so big, I couldn't figure out what else to say, because sometimes that's how our pain feels. And so we just say that to try to make us feel better. But the truth is that God works in spite of the pain that we have in our life. And so if you've ever been there or you experienced that, make sure you check out the podcast. And there's even more phrases that we could have used during this series, like time heals all wounds. Like, really? I don't think so. I've seen some very bitter people. They have been bitter their whole lives, and only time has just made it worse. Or when God closes a door, he opens a window. I don't know what that means. I don't know. It's like suddenly now we're supposed to jump out the window. I don't know. Cleanliness is next to godliness. Actually not in the Bible. For those of you who have been using that with your teenagers to try to get them to shower, sorry, it's actually not in the Bible. There are a lot of those nice sounding, bumper sticker-ish, even well-meaning phrases that we sometimes throw around. And so today I want to tackle a really big one that has been a big one in my own life. Have you ever heard or said the phrase, God won't give you more than you can handle? Actually not in the Bible. This is, again, one of those well-meaning phrases that we sometimes say that actually is not true at all. And the confusion comes because of this passage that Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 10:12. He says, if you think you're standing strong, be careful not to fall. But remember that temptations come into your life that are no different from what others experience. And God is faithful. He will keep the temptation from becoming so strong that you can't stand up against it. When you are, he will show you a way out so that you will not give into it. So what this actually is saying, that there is no temptation that is going to be too great that you can't handle it. And all of us are not exempt to temptation. It comes at us. It is cunning. It takes cheap shots. It attacks when our guard is down. It is deceptively attractive, and all of us are susceptible to it. But we don't ever have to be in a position where we just have to do it, because God, through the Holy Spirit, always provides a way out, an escape route. That is the promise. That when temptation comes on strong, he will be there with an escape plan, not that God won't give you more than you can handle. Actually, people experience more than they can handle all the time. Maybe you have too. We can look throughout the entire Bible. The most faithful characters are constantly placed in positions with way more than they can handle. Some of my most amazing, godly, God-seeking friends have way more than they can handle, way more than is fair. And if I'm going to be honest with you, I often feel like there are many, many times when life is just too much, when I can hardly get out of bed, when I'm super discouraged, completely overwhelmed, heartbroken, lonely, depleted, weak, and I'm ready to throw in the towel. And I imagine that you have been there too. We get more than we can handle all the time. And the truth is, none of us are exempt from this tough stuff. Jesus even said, in this world, you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. But you will have trouble and pain and disappointment and frustration and heartbreak. You see, God didn't promise that he wouldn't give you more than you can handle, but that he will help you handle all that you have been given. That's how he works. So then I wonder why, for many of us, does it feel like we are walking around with way more than we can handle? I mean, for some of you, maybe you feel like the plate spinner guy, like you finally get something turning, and you're over here and you're turning the plate and it's like, oh, okay, dun, 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 I got my work situation figured out. And then you come over and then you're trying to turn a plate, and then it's like, now I've got my home life figured out, but then now my work life is suffering because I'm home, but then I'm supposed to be at work, but then and we just constantly turning the plates like, okay, I'm going to make all the lunches and we're going to pre-cook all of our meals on Saturday, and then it's like, just kidding. We don't have enough groceries, and whatever it is, like we're turning all of these plates, and we can't seem to keep them all spinning at the same time, and we're walking around spinning these plates with a whole lot of baggage. Maybe you resonate yourself with this guy. I think this is actually kind of amazing what he has been able to do. Like, this is pretty incredible. Honestly, I'm super impressed, okay? But I connect with this as like, this looks like my life sometimes. Also, by the way, I feel like it's a free cart, so maybe there was two. Like, maybe you want to, and I don't know how he's going to get it down. Like, what's the plan? Is there a ladder in there? Anyways, I think it's really impressive, but this is kind of how I live my life, where it's like I got some stuff going on, and somebody's like, can you take something else? I'm like, yeah. Sure, like, let me just, hold on, I think I can fit it. Oh yeah, one more thing, sure, totally. I can totally say yes to that because it sounds like fun right now, so I will, and then it ends up like this guy. Or maybe you're like me and you know this is your issue, like you often take on more than you can handle, and so you're like, boundaries. I've read books about them. I've heard they're a really good thing to do. I'm totally going to try that. And so you're like, I'm going to set boundaries. I'm going to clear my entire life out. I'm not taking anything else on. I am going to just do the things that are the most important things. And I have discovered what they are. And I have written them down on the calendar, so I'm sure it'll totally work out. And then you end up acting like the guy, the jerk, Steve Martin. Have you seen this movie? This is like one of my favorite movies. This is a very old movie. Many of you have maybe not seen it, but I want you to picture this, when you're adding more boundaries to your life, because just as soon as you clear it out and you start saying, I'm not going to add one more thing, this is what we often do. Check this out.
I don't need any of this. I don't need this stuff. And I don't need you. I don't need anything except this. This ashtray. And that's the only thing I need is this. I don't need this or this. Just this ashtray. This paddle game. The ashtray and a paddle game, and that's all I need. And this remote control. The ashtray and a paddle game, and and the remote control, and that's all I need. But these matches, the ashtray, and these matches, and the remote control, and the paddle ball. This lamp. The ashtray, this paddle game, and the remote control, and the lamp, and that's all I need. And that's all I need, too. I don't need one other thing. Not one. I need this.
Okay, so when you get tempted to break your boundaries this week, I want you to picture yourself looking like that, pants around the ankles, the whole deal, okay? Because that's what we often look like, right? Like, I don't need anything else. I'm good. I'm clear. Except, maybe this. Okay, well, I can say yes to that. Well, I have to do that. Well, they really need my help for that. Like, I can't say no to that. And then we end up in this place that we don't want to be, where we have way more than we can handle. And I think some of it comes from external pressure, which is very real. Like, we get external pressure from all the things around us, from our job, from our bosses, from our coaches, from our teachers. We have expectations and homework. And kids, we actually have to get to school on time, and we have to show up for meetings, and we have plans, and then we watch a YouTube video about how we're supposed to get more sleep, and we're like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do that, And all this external pressure pushing in on us. And I also think we have very real internal pressure. See, I think often busyness is a state of our soul, not necessarily our calendars. Our identity can be wrapped up in that we can do it all, that we're kind of superheroes. Like everybody else needs to set boundaries. Everybody else needs a Sabbath and a rest. But, my life is pretty important, Plus, that's how I belong. I can't say no to people. Otherwise, they won't invite me in. I won't be accepted. I won't be a part of it. And if I slow down, then I might actually have to feel my feelings. And I don't really want to do that. So if I can just stay occupied, busy, and keep going, maybe I won't have to actually ask myself how I am. I believe today for us that God wants to lift the pressure. Yes, you may have more than you can handle, but He will help you handle all that you have been given if you let Him. God wants you to know today that whatever you face, He is with you. He is with you when you are working, when you are sacrificing, when you are failing, and when you are stressed. He is with you when you are succeeding and when you are messed up. He is with you when it is smooth sailing and when you're in hardships. And here's the thing. He loves us right in the middle of our plate spinning, luggage carrying, just one more thing I can do, one more thing way of life. But He loves us way too much to leave us there. When we let Him help us handle all that we have been given, we will begin to do things His way. And what that looks like is a light load and an easy burden. It leads you by green pastures and still waters, and it restores your soul. His way allows you to cast your cares on Him because He cares for you, and to trust that He knows what you need every day because His mercies are new every morning, and His faithfulness is great. So if this is the place God wants for me and you, how come we stay in this place where we feel like we have more than we can handle? I want to start with a story today that I think kind of gives a picture of what this looks like for us. It's in Mark 4, verse 35. It's Jesus and His disciples, and they're in a boat. And it says, that day when evening came, He said to His disciples, let's go over to the other side. And leaving the crowd behind, they took Him along just as He was in the boat. And there were also other boats with Him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke out over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. And Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke Him up and said to Him, teacher, don't you care if we drowned? And He got up and He rebuked the wind, and He said to the waves, quiet, be still. Then the wind died down and it was completely calm, and He said to His disciples, why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? And they were terrified, and they asked each other, who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey Him. And I have a love-hate relationship with this story. There's a whole lot of things I could pull out of it, but I just want to point out a couple of things that stuck out to me when I was reading it last week. The first one is that Jesus was sleeping. And I find this very annoying. Have you ever been cleaning your house and someone is sleeping on the couch? You know what I'm talking about. Okay, this is what is happening to the disciples in this moment. And He is in the stern sleeping on a pillow, okay? That's a fun fact that He just throws in there for us to let us know that Jesus is like out cold, okay? And there is a storm going on. It's a crazy storm. It's like over the side of the boat sort of storm. Like, is Jesus getting wet while he's sleeping? What is happening right now? And I think it is very fair that the disciples are like, why are you sleeping? What is going on? But here's the thing. Even in the craziest storms, he is not worried. He is not worried. But I resonate with this question the disciples asked because, they're annoyed that he's sleeping. They say, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown? Don't you even care?" Because isn't this the basic question behind so many of our most overwhelming days? It's like, don't you even care? Don't you even want to fix this problem that I'm in? Don't you even care that I am in this temporary problem that has me super freaked out? And his response is to come and he calms the wind and the waves. But then he asks them this question, why are you so afraid? And we see once again that Jesus is asking a question to his disciples. And I see this question and I'm like, well, duh. Like, obvi, God. Like, there's waves crashing over the side. Like, you should be a little afraid, if I'm being honest, right? But he asked them this question not because he needs the answer, but because they do. Jesus asks questions like that all the time. And I think once they heard that question, they probably realized, oh yeah, why are we so afraid? We have seen you do miraculous things. We know that you are faithful, and even if this was the end, that this would be part of your plan, because we have walked with you, and we know you, and we know how you work, and we can trust you. And that if you're not worried, then we don't have to be worried either. So I think from this story, we can grab a couple of things I just want to throw out today that I'm learning. Be helpful to know when you feel like you have more than you can handle. First of all, God cares. Maybe you feel like you're in that boat and the waves are sweeping over the side and you see him and you feel like he's asleep and you don't know where he is at. I need to remind you today, God cares. He cares about you. And just because you can't understand what he is doing doesn't mean he doesn't care. We so often want him to fix our temporary experience and fix it now, but we can trust him no matter what because he is good to us. And you may have more than you can handle, but he will help you handle all that you have been given. Psalms 23 says, even when we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, that we don't have to fear evil because he is with us, that his rod and his staff, as a good shepherd, it will comfort us. This is what he says to us in Isaiah 43, that when you go through deep waters, I will be with you. When you go through rivers of difficulty, you will not drown. When you walk through the fire of oppression, you will not be burned up. The flames will not consume you because I will never fail you. I will never abandon you. We can know that God, when we get to know him, we can understand and we can trust that if it is not good yet, he's just not finished yet because he is good and he is working. He's just not worried. He cares about us and he's not worried. And like I said, this can be annoying. I kind of like someone who's willing to freak out with me when I am freaking out. Like sometimes I don't want you to tell me how it's going to be okay. I just want you to be like, whoa, your life is so hard, But that's not our God. And that's not what he does because our God is a panic-free God. He's a non-anxious presence in the midst of our most turbulent times. We don't want a God who is so weak that he goes up and down with us in our own anxiety. If he feels asleep in the middle of your storm, it's only because he's not worried and he wants you to trust him because he is the only thing that will not change. Our circumstances in our life, it can go up and down and inside and outside. Aren't you glad God doesn't? This mentor of mine one time told me, when I was searching for peace in the midst of my sort of chaotic life, he said, I think, Jen, that maybe God doesn't want you to feel peace there because he doesn't want you to get comfortable there because that's not the kind of life he has for you to live because it's not good for you. So let me ask you something. Where are you feeling pressure? Is it externally? All the things and demands that are being placed on your life from the outside in, and you just feel like you have to show up and show up and show up, and you are exhausted. If it's external pressure, God actually gives a solution for that. He calls it a Sabbath. It's kind of a cool thing that he did, and it's actually a command in the Bible that we would take 24 hours and put it down and recognize that we're not God and that he is. I wonder how many of us in our lives don't even do that. We don't take 24 hours off. We just go and go and go and go. Listen, if you have external pressures that have kept you so busy that you do not have 24 hours to put it down, let me just say, maybe you have more to do than God, because he did it. He rested. He put it down. And he wants that for us because he wants us to trust him. So maybe it's time to clear out some of your external pressures and say, I will not take on more, and I will remove some things so that I can rest, because God is God and I'm not. Or maybe your pressures are internal. This is huge, because honestly, if it really is not necessarily our calendar that is pushing us, but our internal pressure that I have to perform and I have to overachieve and I have to be at everything speeding up in my life, and I can't really experience quiet. It doesn't matter how much you clear out of your calendar, you are not going to rest. I think it's interesting. I did a process called the Genesis process, and the author, Michael Dye, has this incredible way to kind of tell where you're at. And basically, he's shown over time, as he's worked with thousands and thousands of addicts, that you can actually tell when an addict is going to relapse 30 days out from their relapse, because they follow something called the faster scale. They slide down the faster scale. And the faster scale looks like this. The first is that you forget priorities. You stop doing all the things that help you stay strong and anchored, which creates a great anxiety in you. And anxiety actually produces energy, so we get addicted to it, and we want to feel anxious about the things in our life because it keeps us moving and going. And if we got rid of our anxiety, we might stop being so productive. And then what happens is we speed up because we feel anxious, we don't want to feel, and so we make ourselves really busy, which then makes us very resentful at all the people in our lives, and we get ticked off and we're easily frustrated and mad, which leads us to absolute exhaustion, which obviously leaves us open to our behaviors that we don't want to be. And relapse can be with drugs and alcohol, or it can be with workaholism, or it can be with pornography, or it can be with all of these things that we use in our life to escape our life. And I think that is so interesting to me, that so many of these have to do with being occupied and busy and not slowing down and not being present in our lives. I want to invite you today to grab a pillow and sit down with Jesus in the middle of your storm and invite him in to that place with you. Welcome him into the anxiety. Be honest with him in it and say, I need your help to heal what is really going on within me. And you'll hear him say to you, are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you burned out on religion? Come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you will learn to live freely and lightly. His invitation to us is to put down the plates, leave the luggage, not pick up another thing. And then he does this amazing thing. He brings us out into a spacious place. He rescues us because he delights in us. Thank God for that. Because he cares and he's not worried. And he is also working. You can be sure of it. That whatever it is that is coming your way, that he will use it to grow in you the kind of character and the kind of person that he wants you and needs you to be in this world. We may not see what he is doing in our situation, but I promise he is doing something in you. And he wants you to learn to trust him and to not be afraid. Sometimes I think it feels like we are enrolled in UCD, like not OCD, or not ACDC, but maybe for some of you. But UCD, it was the University of Character Development. I like how J. Oswald Sanders puts it. He says, God is anxious that his children get a good education. Every person he has used has had a course in wilderness training. Joseph, Moses, Elijah, John the Baptist, Paul, and even his divine son. These are just a few of the distinguished graduates. The fees are large. The courses are severely high, the discipline exacting, and many don't keep up but drop out. But the marked results are broad perspective, steady nerves, keen eyesight and insight, utter dependence on God, utter independence of man, childlike simplicity, warm sympathy, deep humility, and the highest award goes to patience, the rarest trait of all. God has no shortcuts in his training program. See, God doesn't want us to just feel good. He wants us to become good. And often the road to becoming good doesn't feel all that good. But here's what I'm learning, and if I'm being honest with you, kind of in the middle of learning it the hard way. That God uses all these things in our lives to deepen our dependence on him. As my friend Debbie likes to say, most of the time our problem actually isn't weakness, it's independence. So often we depend on things and schedules and achievements and busyness and to-do lists and approval and stress and markers of all the things who define who we are, because what we do becomes who we are. If I can just do more, I will be more. But God uses our more than we can handle lives to tear down our false walls of security and to topple our idols of distraction and to say to us, come to me, I am strong. No matter what happens, you are safe with me. And I am learning that the biggest thing he is doing is creating a dependence on him so that we will stop operating our lives out of a need to be loved and start operating our eyes out of being loved. I'm going to say that again. He's trying to create a dependence on him so that we stop operating our lives out of a need to be loved and start operating our lives out of the fact that we already are loved, that we're operating out of this place. And then it allows us to have enough love for ourselves, enough love for one another. Because one of the most important things you can know when you are carrying more than you can handle is that you are not alone. It's a good day when we realize that most of us are like the rest of us. When we are overwhelmed, God gives us his presence, but he also gives us his people. And I hope you know today. And maybe it's the one thing you could get from coming into this place today is that whatever you are going through, you are not alone. We may be in different boats, but we're all navigating the same choppy sea. You are not alone. In fact, we're going to end today with a glimpse of this with each other. Not yet, but in a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand if you are carrying something heavy, if you're spending too many plates, if you keep adding just one more exception to your boundary list. Not yet, but in a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand if your heart is heavy, if you feel like you have too much going on. If the answer you give to how are you is good, busy, so busy, but good. I'm going to ask you to stand if you wrestle with anxiety and depression. If you're starting something new and you have no clue what you're doing, or if you've been doing something for far too long and you wish you could quit. If you have a to-do list that has things on it that you keep transferring to a new list that you can never get to, or if you don't want to write a to-do list because it's too overwhelming. Not yet, but in a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand if you know that you're keeping yourself busy because you're afraid to be quiet, or if your life suddenly got quiet and you feel very alone. In a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand if sometimes joy feels impossible and sometimes it's really hard to get out of bed in the morning. Not yet, but in a minute, I'm going to ask you to stand if you've been thinking this whole time, no matter what this lady says, I know I am standing. Or if you've experienced a loss of some sort the last couple years, or if you have some external pressures because your job is hard, or your email inbox is full, or parenting is hard, or you just started your freshman year or your senior year, or if you have a tough coach, or lately you have more months than money at the end of the month in your bank account, or you're struggling in your marriage, or you have a friend who is deeply hurting, or you feel like a failure, or struggling with guilt or addiction or shame or fear or worry, and sometimes it just feels like the waves are crashing over your life boat. Now, if any of this applies to you today, would you please courageously stand? Now, if you're sitting, you have to help the rest of us, okay? This is what I want us to see today, that most of us are like the rest of us. Most of us are just trying to figure it out, hold it together, and keep ourselves together. But I want you to look around today. You're not alone. We are in this together. And God may not have promised that he wouldn't give you more than you can handle, but he will help you handle all that you have been given. And so to take a picture today as we leave this place, I actually want you to kind of grab the people around you. And if you're not standing, you can go ahead and stand and put your arms around each other. And I want to just say a prayer over you today. I want you to see this. I want you to have this picture in your mind as you go throughout the week, that I'm not alone and I have people. And you may not even know the people who are next to you, but I want you to know today that you are in this with somebody else, so you're in this together. Let's pray. God, I thank you for the promise that even when it feels like we have more than we can handle, that you will help us handle all we've been given. And God, there are people in this room that are carrying really heavy stuff. And so I ask you, Father, to lift the burden, to lift the load. If your way is easy and your load is light and you lead us by green pastures, God, show us where they are. Help us to walk in a way that is sensitive to you and that leads us in a way where we can lay it down, where we can find space from our external pressure and get healing from our internal pressure, God, and walk with you in a place that looks like peace and hope and love. And we thank you for that invitation today in Jesus' name.